So let's talk about a man who lived a double life. On one hand, he was a celebrated military historian and a professional mariner. But on the other, he claimed he could photograph invisible creatures in the sky and literally engineer the weather. This is the absolutely strange dual world of Trevor James Constable.
This quote right here, it's really the key to understanding the guy. For Constable, the universe wasn't something to just have faith in. It was something you had to get your hands dirty with. He went looking for a pulse of life because he was actually out there building the tools he thought could measure it.
And that right there is the central puzzle, isn't it? How does a man with these super grounded, respectable jobs, a merchant marine radio officer, a well-known military historian, also become a pioneer in engineering the weather using forces that, let's be honest, modern science doesn't even recognize?
Okay, so first things first, let's look at the official story. Before he was an etheric engineer, Trevor James Constable was a man with an incredibly solid professional background. You have to understand this part to get the rest.
So you look at this, and it's not just some random resume, right? This is a foundation of pure credibility. Think about it. A radio officer on the Queen Mary has to be meticulous, precise. A military historian has to be obsessed with evidence, details, and facts. These are the exact skills he would later apply to his much stranger work. This was a serious, detail-oriented guy.
But this is where his life takes a sharp, almost unbelievable turn. He starts to apply that same professional focus, that same meticulous nature, to a world that is, by its very definition, completely invisible. It all kicks off in the California desert, which back in the 50s was basically the epicenter of UFO culture. Constable gets connected with this figure, George Van Tassel, who was famous for holding these channeling sessions to supposedly communicate with aliens. And Constable, being who he was, didn't just watch from the sidelines. He dove in headfirst. And what he found was incredibly dangerous. He called it an eruption, not an eruption, an irruption, a violent invasion into his mind. This wasn't some gentle spiritual awakening for him. No, he saw it as a full-on battle for his own consciousness, against voices that were just, as he put it, pouring confusing rubbish into him. So he slammed on the brakes hard. He decided this whole subjective path was a trap. But he didn't give up on the idea of unseen worlds. Not at all. Instead, he just completely pivoted. He started looking for a way to objectively document these things, to capture them with a camera, not just with his mind. And this new path led him to his first, and maybe his most bizarre discovery. He called them critters. Using special infrared film, he claimed he was photographing these massive, amoeba-like creatures living right in our atmosphere, totally invisible to the naked eye. He actually thought they were a form of life made of plasma, a completely separate branch of evolution, hiding in plain sight above our heads. Okay, so he's photographed the invisible. What's next? Well, for Constable, it wasn't enough to just see them. He had to understand and then interact with the energies that sustain this unseen world. He became a master synthesizer, pulling together the work of three very different and very controversial pioneers. He basically built his own working model of the universe by combining three really radical ideas. From Rudolf Steiner, he took this idea of etheric forces, sort of like the invisible blueprint for life. From Wilhelm Reich, he took orgone, the raw cosmic energy that life is actually built from. And from Dr. Ruth Drown, he learned about radionics, the technology that could supposedly tune into and interact with both. This quote right here, this is everything for understanding his method. He was absolutely adamant that these devices had to work on their own, without any psychic help from the person using them. For Constable, this was about physics, not about being a psychic. He believed that mixing the two would lead him right back to that dangerous, bewildering realm of channeling that he'd already fought so hard to escape. It had to be empirical, period. And all of this theory, all of this synthesis, brings us to his most famous work. See, it wasn't enough to just have these ideas. Constable was an engineer at his core. He had to build something. He had to make it work. And this was his motto, his guiding light. Only results count. He wasn't interested in sitting around debating whether the ether existed. While other people were arguing, he was out there developing technology to actually use it and get tangible, measurable results. For him, the proof was in the pudding, or in this case, the proof was in the rain. His technology evolved a lot over time. He started with these devices based on Wilhelm Reich's designs, which were basically just pipes aimed at the sky and grounded in water. He cheekily called them Willie's wand. But eventually, he developed his own unique, waterless devices he called etheric translators, which used specific geometric shapes. And he found they were way more powerful when you mounted them on an airplane, letting him treat the atmosphere directly.
And this is where the claims just get, frankly, astonishing. He said he used his devices to part fog for ships. He called it the Moses effect. He took on contracts in Singapore where he would only get paid if he successfully made it rain. In 1990, he conducted something called Operation Clincher, a smog reduction effort that was so official it was actually filed with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And his own ship, the SS Maui, became his personal lab, and it became legendary for the rain that just seemed to follow it everywhere it went across the Pacific.
So, where does all this leave us? Is it just a strange story about a man who photographed sky monsters and made it rain? Well, believe it or not, Constable's legacy is actually being carried forward today into a fascinating and really practical new field. It's called bioarchitecture, and the core idea is to take all the principles that Constable was working with, these etheric forces, the power of geometry, and build them directly into our buildings. The idea is, instead of our cities being these inert or even harmful blocks of concrete, we could create structures that actively harmonize with and heal the local environment.
Now, the goals here, they're not small. We're talking about restoring balance between our cities and nature, improving local weather and air quality, and actively helping to heal the planet. And this isn't just some theory. The Guru Charan Tirth project in India is a real-world example of a massive structure being built right now with these very principles in mind. It's designed to be a piece of functional etheric technology.
And this brings us to the final question, really. After this whole unbelievable journey, from sailor to historian to weather engineer, we're kind of left to wonder, what if he was onto something? What if the key to healing our planet isn't just in what we stop doing, but in how we start building? Could the very shape and geometry of our world be the solution we've been looking for?